perspective. The average newspaper, radio in America kind of takes a very left leaning perspective about everything over here, and it's like, we should have this two states, and like, blah blah blah. And I'm like, you don't understand. First of all, the Middle East is not a Western culture. It never was. It never is going to be. It's just, this is, 5,000 years of literally, Attila the Hun like thinking. If I don't kill you, you're just going to come back and kill me tomorrow, kind of thing. And that kind of is the way the entire area thinks, not just Israel and the people in Gaza, but like all over the Arab Peninsula. And when it comes down to it, that's kind of how most countries are too. Most countries, it's very nice to say this, but then, look, the U.S. is going and they're fighting over in Yemen and they're fighting in other places. The U.S. always sends people to do different things.
True. And
people don't always argue against the U.S. side, and sometimes validly and sometimes not so, just like anywhere else. It's a whole balance. But the world, because of social media, also has allowed everybody to have that opinion. And so if you really just don't like someone or something, you're going to say it. And there's always someone who will be on that side. And if you do like people, you are for it, that's great. But those people are not the ones you hear about. Just like if I go to a restaurant and don't like the restaurant, I'd probably tell more people I don't like the restaurant than if I did like the restaurant. Mm-hmm. Because we know psychologically that's what people do. It's the same thing here. Negative. Right. So you're always seeing and hearing about the negative people way more than the positive people. And I think that's been the hardest part for a lot of the Jewish people worldwide, is that they realize now that a lot of their neighbors and even their countries or states really don't care about them. And they're really starting to think about just what is that future for them? Do they want to stay where they are? Do they not want to do that? Should they do something different? Should they be something different? And the answer, of course, is depends for every person, but it's basically it's causing a lot of people to think about a lot of things that they probably honestly put off in thinking about because they just didn't envision they would have to.
I definitely can understand that, being, a woman of color. Sometimes you do have to think about things, and sometimes you can get very comfortable in not thinking about them due to certain privileges that we have. And even as an American citizen, there's certain privileges that you have that you just don't even think about. And then when something challenges that, it sort of shakes your foundation. I am curious to hear your input on this whole discussion of Zionism, and being anti-Zionist is not being anti-Semitic. What are your thoughts on that, being that you live in Israel?
So, anti-Zionist and not being anti-Semitic. So in the end, it really is the same thing. Because at the end of the day, there's really no nuance of difference. I can say from experience in certain places where I used to kind of say that about certain countries, where I'd say, they're not anti-Jewish, but they're anti-Israel, which is kind of true. There are some places like that. But after October 7th, I think our attitude and our view of a lot of that has changed, where they were basically hiding one from the other because they needed to do so for business, political, financial, legal, whatever their purpose. But after October 7th, we basically realized that nobody really cares, and it didn't matter. So if you say you're one, you're also the other, because by default, there's no way not to be. Someone said, well, if you're not on the Israel side, then you're on the terrorist side, because there is no other side. And people don't really like to think that way, but that kind of is what it is. It's like, which side do you want to be on? The one who did all these things on October 7th, or the one who's trying to prevent them from doing it to the rest of the world? And so all these people are like, no, we're just, we're against Israel, not Jews. Like, well, it's like, well, I mean, from being there, when you're overseas, there's a lot of countries who don't like America.
Yes, that's true.
There's There's a lot of places where they don't want to see McDonald's show up and they don't want to see the American army. And they're, look, the people in Gaza on 9/11 were dancing and partying and giving out candy when everything went on. That's
Mhm.
the people that we basically are dealing with. And for people to sit there and Americans to sit there and say that, these people don't deserve what's going on. It's like, you don't understand. They really don't care about you. And if they were in America, they would basically just go and hunt you down too because they just don't care. And so, for the people who really believe that they can be anti Zionist and not anti Semitic, I just love to have them explain to me how they actually come to that conclusion that makes any kind of sense.
Hmm. That's interesting. I'm curious to hear your thoughts because we see a lot of, obviously there's propaganda, and I always
Yeah.
say, and I'll die on this sword, that the powers that be control the narrative, and what you feed into, you're gonna go with. And so to
True.
always, with caution, watch social media and watch the news, because there are greater powers that you know really nothing about that are maneuvering, we'll
Yeah.
say, and the all
Hmm.
of these things that are happening for outcomes that don't necessarily, you would not understand really as an everyday citizen, we'll just say it that way.
Right.
um and so to take everything kind of with a grain of salt, but it is really hard to watch images of children dying, and that kind of image being put in people's mind, I think, is really how the left grasps onto um, the concern for Palestine. And now there's a lot of death
Right.
happening around the world. I have been screaming and yelling as often as I can about Armenia and what's happening there,
Yeah.
for a year before any of this happened, and no one cares.
No one cares.
Like no,
Right.
I went
So,
to
like,
Armenia, and
why do they all care about this little, place that's like the size of, Manhattan? Like why
well,
is
I mean,
this?
I don't
Why
think
is it any
so.
different? That's what's really interesting. Why
So,
why is this so different? Not that
and it's
I'm not
true.
saying it's
It's
wrong that
true.
they do it, but it's like, why don't you care about any of the other places that are just killing everybody?
That's my point. I'm like, we have to care about everybody, um,
Right. But it's hard.
or nobody, right? Like, it's, but so we should
Well, yeah,
obviously care
there was a
about
lot of that.
everyone, right?
After
And
9/11, a lot of America was like that. We don't care about anybody, just kill them all. That was the attitude for a while.
it was
And
too.
that it didn't, it doesn't work in the global scale because
No,
that's not a practical way to be.
and it's
It's
horrible.
understandable in the short term, right? It's understandable in the short term because, like anything else, someone hits you, you want to hit them back, But there's also, like in this case specifically, right? If they had come in and they had killed people and done what they did and kind of, that was it, that would be one thing. But the fact that they took 200 people hostage back, and some of them weren't even Israelis. They were just people who were visiting, people who were from all other countries, people who were
Horrible.
not, people who were even Arabs that they killed, people who were Muslims that they killed. Like, and they just took all of them back, and it's like, well, what are you going to do? Like, how do you think that that was a good idea? And we probably wouldn't have done any of the stuff we did if that's what they had done. But because of what they did, we need our people back, and we're going to do what we have to do. And to be fair, I mean, yes, there are people who are going to die in it, but there are people on our side too who have. And people argue about, is it obviously the pictures that people find are always going to be that case. But war is the way it was. We didn't have pictures from World War II. We didn't even have pictures really from Korea and Vietnam for a long time. Think about it. Back then, you only got whatever the AP photographer got a picture of or Time Life, and that was
Right.
it. And you didn't even know the stuff that was going on. It was only later when people found out about Pearl Harbor, even like a day later, because it was only once the news could like publish it. And
Mhm.
so now we're in a place where every little thing that happens, everyone knows. Whatever it is, someone knows. It's there. It's posted. It's this. It's that. And on top of that, we've got AI fake, and we've got all kinds of other stuff. People are making stuff up,
Mhm.
and because of what's going on, people are pulling stuff out that's like 20 years old video footage of things that isn't even what's happening now. You can't fight it all, and you can't really argue with it all. but the Israeli army does a lot of effort to try and minimize what happens. I mean, I would love to say everybody in Gaza was, you know, just accidentally in the wrong place under the wrong regime. But that's just
Mhm.
not really the case. The people who are trying to get on the evacuation routes, who are trying to, go wherever they were told to go and get out of the way, those people probably are the good people. But there's a huge amount of people who didn't do that. And they
Mm.
stayed and they basically wanted to fight, and basically they're getting what they paid for. And there's nothing that Israel's going to say or do that's going to change that.
I oftentimes think about,
I forgot what they said. No, go ahead.
and I was gonna say, I oftentimes think about when I'm because I see all of this propaganda, and I have friends sending me stuff. I have my Jewish friends sending
Yeah.
me stuff, which I'm sending them a lot of love right now, actually. And I have all this other information coming towards me, explaining what's going on. And it's really sad and heartbreaking, and sending love also to all the people who are losing loved ones, because I believe in humanity. I hate to see the death and dying, but I also am in reality. And you brought up 9/11. And I always say to people, what do you think the United
Sorry.
States would do? What do you think the United States would do if another
If
country came in here and abducted a bunch of citizens and raped and killed and slaughtered and celebrated doing that in the
Yeah,
United States? I'm just like, sit back for a minute. I'm prior military. I'm comfortable in
yeah,
understanding what would happen.